Aqui, ó. Bom dia, gente. Seja bem-vindo para o Ethereum Rio, terceira edição. Meu nome é Stanley, eu sou o fundador do Brasil Crypto Report. E muito obrigado, Antônio, para o convite para ser aqui com vocês hoje. E também eu quero agradecer a Antônio e a equipe dele para fazendo todo esse evento aqui. Cara, foi uma luta para fazer tudo isso em 2 meses, mas eles arrasaram, né, para fazer tudo isso. Então, para fazer assim, todo prazo curto assim, é muito luta, mas foi muito importante para reunir todo mundo assim na comunidade aqui no Rio. So I'm going to do this talk in English just because I rehearsed it in English, so it'll be a little easier. But if you want to talk afterward in Portuguese about it, I can do that as well. And so Antonio asked me to do a state of the market talk here to open up, and just thinking of what's been happening the last couple of weeks in crypto, like there's no other conclusion I can come to other than like the only thing that really matters in the crypto markets at this point for the next 6 months is going to be the U.S. presidential election. At this point, there's just like no way to really deny that. You have the Federal Reserve in the U.S. has signaled that there probably won't be any more rate increases for the rest of the year. That might change, but it doesn't look likely. And it's really going to be the next 6 months just seeing, okay, what's going to happen in the U.S. now that you have a very political, crypto has officially become like a ballot box issue in the United States, right? And so I'm going to try to tell this, make this case to you essentially. And this isn't like an endorsement of any, political candidate or policies or anything, or it's not investment advice or anything like that. Just trying to lay out a framework for you, especially since you guys are obviously not from the U.S. and it's helpful to have like a gringo here to maybe sometimes explain these things. But basically trying to lay out a framework for you to understand like kind of what's going on over the next 6 months in the markets. And I'm going to try to tell this story through the lens of these 2 meme coins here. So on the one hand you have this MAGA Trump, and then you have Geo Bowden, which I'm sure you have come across in some capacity. So a bit more about me. I'm founder of Brazil Crypto Report, which is a newsletter podcast that just focuses on the Brazilian market, really trying to just support what's happening, provide more content in English about what's happening in the market here in Brazil. I also work at Filecoin Foundation as editorial director. So we are sponsors of this event also, so I'll be talking about Filecoin tomorrow. Used to work at CoinDesk, used to work at Financial Times in Washington, a bunch of other stuff. So let's take a quick look at the price of the MAGA coin here, right? So you can see over the last week, the price of the MAGA Trump coin has more than doubled. And if we go to the Geo Bowden coin, we can see that it's been sort of slowly chopping downwards, right? And okay, these are just meme coins. They're not real. They're not tied to anything. Why does this matter? Well, the point is here. I think the price increases and the decreases here really reflect the overall market sentiment toward the U.S. political situation at the moment, and we'll explain that here. And kind of the core thesis I want you to take away here is that it's becoming clear now that the main driver of price action in the market over the last 12 months and over the next 6 months has been and will be the U.S. political situation, basically. This kind of cut off the bottom of the slide here, but you can see here that the price action over the last year was really chopping sideways throughout the entire U.S. summer months, and it wasn't until about like October, November of last year when we finally got an uptick in the price, and that was at the same time as it became more clear that the SEC would need to approve a Bitcoin ETF. So recall that there had been these lawsuits with Grayscale. Grayscale was suing to allow the SEC to allow them to convert their GBTC Bitcoin Trust into an ETF. SEC said no, so they sued. But eventually the SEC lost that case, and they basically were forced by the courts to approve this ETF. There was no way out. And once it became widely known that there's no other way that the SEC could get out of this, as much as they did not want to approve the ETFs, they had to. Once that became clear, you started seeing some of this price action tipping up over Christmas and into the new year, et cetera. And then January 10th, we have the big date when the ETFs get approved. It was a 3-2 decision. So Gary Gensler, our dear friend, he sided with Republicans to vote to approve the Bitcoin ETFs. And the 2 other Democrats on the commission voted to oppose it. So we had about like 10 or 11 ETFs launching the next day, and then it was off to the races, as you can see. And over the next month, we went up to 73,000, a new all-time high. And by any metric, these have been a huge success, right? We've had nearly $300 billion worth of total spot ETF volumes. And some of this was people withdrawing money out of Grayscale GBTC and putting it into other products. So it's not necessarily all like net inflows. But you can see by any metric, these have been massively successful products. And you can see that reflected in the price of Bitcoin over the last couple of months. And further, there was an expectation upon the approval of these ETFs and the success of these ETFs that, wow, we've finally gotten past this psychological barrier of the SEC and Gary Gensler like trying to kill us, trying to harass us, trying to destroy this industry. Like they finally approved it, and like it's off to the races now. So there's an expectation that we were going to be getting an Ethereum ETF in May. And there was, the Bloomberg analysts and the other kind of professional commentators and handicappers were saying there's 50% chance we're going to be getting an Ethereum ETF in May. So that was the driver for a lot of the price action in March. And now, I'm going to shift gears here a little bit. So crypto in the U.S. has for the most part been framed by industry advocates as like a nonpartisan issue, right? It's like there's always been people in Congress and in presidential administrations who support crypto on the Republican side, and there's people who oppose it. On the Democrat side, there's been people who support it, there's been people who oppose it. There's things that conservatives like about crypto, like the freedom, the free markets, less reliance on government. There's things that progressives can like about crypto, whether it's financial inclusion, UBI, expanded opportunities, things like that. Like, it shouldn't be, it's a technology, it shouldn't be like a political thing, right? And that was always how the industry was approaching this in Washington. And I think the assumption was that, the reason that the SEC and like these people in the government keep trying to attack us and keep trying to kill us is that they just don't understand what we're trying to do. Like, it's an education issue. We just need to keep giving more education. We need to keep, just talking to people and meeting with people and trying to, just inform them about what we're trying to do. And then once they know what we're trying to do, they will all of a sudden turn around and like us, right? And that was the assumption. But in reality, I think people have woken up to the reality that no amount of education is going to, unfortunately, persuade these people to like us on the Democrat side of the aisle, unfortunately. So these are just some of the headlines over the last month of some of the kind of enforcement actions that have happened. So Uniswap got an enforcement action from the SEC. Consensus and the Ethereum Foundation are being targeted by the SEC. More kind of crypto money laundering FUD coming from the Elizabeth Warren crowd. The White House basically vowed to veto a piece of pro-crypto legislation that was passed last week. So we've arrived at a point where it's like, okay, unfortunately, there's one side that is, like, they're not willing to play ball at all here. Like, they're not willing to be supportive at all in any sense. And people in the industry have kind of woken up to this realization that, okay, like, this is not going very well, right? So about a week ago, I'm sure most of you are probably familiar with Masari. So Ryan Selkis is the CEO of Masari, and he has been a kind of a vocal like crypto proponent, advocate on Twitter over the last 10 years. But he was a Biden supporter in 2020, but he was the guy, or basically over the last 12 months, he was the guy that really pioneered this whole single issue voter crypto mindset. He's like, the only issue I'm voting on in 2024 is like whether the candidate is pro-crypto or anti-crypto. Like, everything else is irrelevant, right? And the idea is like the U.S. cannot be ceding leadership and innovation to China and other places. We need to be keeping these jobs here. We need to be keeping innovation here in the country. So he basically went from being a full-on Biden supporter to being kind of, I don't know if say like red-pilled, but he ended up just converting, and now all of a sudden on May 8th, about a week ago, he shows up at Mar-a-Lago in Florida at this meeting of like Trump NFT holders, and he's there, and I don't know how he got in there, maybe he bought the NFT, I guess, but he's there, and President Trump calls him up on stage just randomly, and then he he proceeds to endorse Trump on stage, and then Trump comes up afterward and he's like, basically saying, look, if you want to support crypto, like, you got to vote for me. There's no other option. Like, I'm the only pro-crypto candidate. The other guy's going to kill it. And so Selkis came out with this tweet, and it kind of just set the whole crypto Twitter world on fire, where people are, obviously Trump is like a controversial guy. People have mixed opinions on him. But I think a lot of people are kind of realizing, like, okay, like, do we really have an option here? Like, if we want to save crypto in this country, do we really have an option? And you can see just like this kind of just unleashed a total kind of madhouse of publicity and press around this. So like Politico is like a Washington, D.C. kind of political insider publication, framing this as like, oh, crypto is Trump's new weapon against Joe Biden in the campaign. You can have Mark Cuban, who's been a lifelong Democrat, very like anti-Trump guy, who in this tweet here, you can see he's just blasting the SEC and Gensler and Joe Biden, saying like, if you guys lose this election, it's because of this, the SEC. You guys have just been negligent in your duties here. So this has really like rattled the cage with a lot of people. And it gets to the question of like, would a Trump presidency actually be good for crypto, right? People are assuming that yes, it would, but would it actually be good? And the answer is, well, I mean, we don't like actually know. He was president for 4 years before, and he wasn't really pro crypto then. He had like Brian Brooks, who he had appointed as the head of the OCC, one of the banking agencies, very pro crypto. I think he's actually an advisor to Hashdex and like Valor Capital now, if I'm not mistaken. He was very pro crypto, but on the other hand, there was people in Trump's administration, Steve Mnuchin, who was the Treasury Secretary, and then like Jay Clayton, the SEC chair, who were very anti-crypto. Clayton famously launched a lawsuit against our friends at Ripple on his last day in office. So it was a very mixed bag, right? So I think people in the crypto community in the US have woken up to this, they're wrestling with this reality that, okay, like, we don't really know if Trump would be good for crypto, but we definitely know that the alternative is going to be bad for crypto, right? So that begs the question, can Trump actually win? And according to some of the polling, this is sort of an average composite of the top like 5-10 polls. And Trump, it looks like he's up by like 1%. So he's doing okay. And I won't get into like the nuances of US elections here, but basically there's a list of 7 states here that you kind of have to win if you want to win the presidential election. And Trump is leading in all these states. And then, so going back to, tying this all back together here, I think we can kind of safely say that, like, kind of tying it back to the prices of these meme coins here. The whole idea was like using these meme coins as a proxy to reflect the industry's sentiment on and bullishness or bearishness on these various presidential candidates. And I think we're at the point now where we can say that these two, like, this is going to be the singular focus of the industry for the next 6 months. Like this is the only this presidential election is going to be the only thing that will be really driving prices in any way. Like, we will not be getting an Ethereum ETF approval. Fed rates will be likely, there likely won't be any rate rises until the end of the year. It's unclear what other types of events might really generate any kind of massive price action in any way. Anyway, so this is, and I realize this is very ironic because we're trying to build in crypto, we're trying to build sort of like an opt-out system from like existing governments and existing systems. We're trying to build alternatives, and we've arrived at this point where the main factor influencing the market right now is a U.S. presidential election, which is like very, it's something to think about. Like, we really shouldn't be in this position where this even matters, right? Like, the whole point is like we want to be independent of this stuff, right? So that's what I would submit to you as maybe something to take away from this. But I'm hoping that this framing has been helpful in maybe understanding a bit of what's been going on. Just over the last, if you've been on crypto Twitter at all over the last week, people have just been like pulling their hair out over this. I mean, I think some people are like, like, I don't care, how good Trump is for crypto. Like, there's no way I'm going to vote for this guy. Other people are like, I hate the guy, but like, look, if he's going to support crypto, I'll vote for him. Like, it's complicated, but I just wanted to kind of set this framing or lay out this framework to you and hopefully this is helpful as you, think about making, business decisions or investment decisions, capital allocation decisions in the coming months. Happy. That's about all I have. Please take a look at Brazil Crypto Report if you want to follow me. But happy to chat about any of this stuff afterwards if you guys are interested or about whatever else you guys are working on. And hopefully, appreciate you guys, taking time to listen to me here. So, yeah. All right. We've got a couple minutes left, so if you guys want, if anybody has any burning questions or...
So a couple months back, I remember that Trump, during his campaign, he explicitly was against an American CBDC. Do you view that as a rejection of the technology or the opposite, an embracement of the decentralized nature of crypto?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. It's one I probably should have brought up in here. The CBDC issue has become kind of politicized in the U.S. now as well, and I think a lot of this came from actually Vivek Ramaswamy. If you remember, he was one of the opponents to Trump in the primary elections, where he came out very strongly against the CBDC, and like Ron DeSantis of Florida came out against the CBDC, and I'm not sure these guys really fully understand what a CBDC even is, to be honest. But I think it was more of a way of trying to signal that, hey, we're like pro-liberty and we're anti-surveillance and we're anti, kind of government intrusion in people's. I mean, these folks are trying to draw the attachment of, or make an attachment of CBDCs to basically like a Chinese surveillance state type of model, right? Like a social credit system built in and all this kind of like Orwellian dystopian stuff built into it. So it's become a fairly common position on the Republican side of the aisle in the U.S. to be like anti-CBDC. And I think there's been maybe some legislation that's been introduced along those lines as well. But that might become an issue in this campaign. I don't think Trump really knows enough about it to, I mean, he says a lot of these things, but he doesn't really know what he's actually saying. He's a campaigner, right? He's a sales, like he says what people want to hear, right? So anyway, that's my thoughts on that. But any other questions? Anybody disagree with my analysis?